Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Quantum Bridge. We have Geoff Thompson with us again. Welcome back, Geoff. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. We were discussing previously that the reason we do this show and we talk about these things, it's not to, it's not out of pity that we share our stories and things. It's to actually, pass on knowledge we've learned and to ultimately maybe help others in their journey. I know you're very big on that, Geoff. So
Yeah, that was a great point, Gary. Yeah, because I actually didn't realize it until you said it, but that was the genesis of my story. That when I was deeply depressed and very fearful, and at some points afraid to live, I remember reading books and going everywhere to try and get the answers, and nobody was giving me a modality that felt like it had any truth in it at all. I think people were afraid of the truth. And I remember being angry, and I remember saying to myself, I've made a vow. When I find the truth, I'm going to tell everybody. I am absolutely going to tell everybody. Now, I didn't realize it at the time because I was only in my early 20s, but I discovered the key to the tree of life. There's a lovely saying in Judaism. It says, the master sets the table for the servant before he eats himself. It basically says, if you want abundance, don't bring it down for yourself. Bring it down to share it. If you bring it down to share it, they call this the desire to receive in order to share, which is the secret to the tree of life. You will have abundance. So the obviously we make the vow, which is I'm going to share this with everybody. But as Casper said before, the danger or the difficulty with that is that once you've got it, you have to keep that vow because this energy comes into you. It's a living energy, it's spirit, and it becomes stagnant and pestilent if we don't move it, if we don't keep our vow. So, of course, the moment I understood this, I started to teach it. I started to talk about it. I started to everything I'd learned about overcoming fear, about converting fear into consciousness, and being the proof of it as well. Because my life was expanding beyond anybody's expectations. Within a couple of years of understanding this, I gave up my job. I haven't worked since I was 32. I started teaching full time, started writing books. My life changed radically. So the desire to receive in order to share is the secret, but I felt it. I absolutely felt it. It wasn't something I tagged on to the end of my mission statement. I absolutely felt it. I knew there were kids out there like me who were so afraid, and I wanted to put something in front of them that would guide them. And I had certainty, Gary. I had certainty. I had Yakim, as I mentioned last time, and Yakim is it's from Islam, and it says it's one of the 99 names of Allah, and it's in my book. But it says that the truth is undeniably right in front of them. And I saw that. I saw that when I overcame the fear was liberated and the energy that was in the fear expanded me. So you go from being afraid of a spider in the bath. And literally, if there was a spider in the corner of my room, I wouldn't sleep. I went from there to standing in nightclub doors, facing down monsters and maniacs, and then writing books. But something Casper said last time was really interesting, which I liked. And that is once you tell the truth, once you know the truth, that's not enough. You've got to tell the truth. And not everybody's invested in hearing the truth. You put a book out there, you're suddenly thinking, oh, who am I going to offend? Who's going to be affected by this? Because the allegory of Plato's cave. The allegory of Plato's cave is that you've got lots of people living in a cave and they're chained into the cave so they can only face the wall. And they believe that reality is the shadows they see on the wall in front of them. One of the people escapes from the cave, goes outside. He's a bit blinded by the light, but realizes that the shadows on the wall are really just a reflection from the light outside the cave. So he comes back in and he wants to tell them all, this isn't reality. Reality's out there. But what do? They want to kill him. They want to kill him because they're afraid of the truth, because they're comfortable with this. And it's kind of Plato's take on the need for education and the need for truth. As Casper kept saying it last time, which I really loved. The truth. What's the truth? There is a singularity that is the truth. And that's what I learned on a nightclub. Well, I learned it in a terraced house in Coventry with paint and wallpaper coming off the walls. I found the truth. And the truth was that these fears have no legitimacy, but they do contain light. They present as a three-dimensional monster, but if I'm prepared to confront them and absorb them, these three-dimensional monsters will become two-dimensional cartoons, and they will dissipate, and they will give me the light that they're hiding. And I will also create a vacuum to get more light. But the key to it, as you said, is that I receive this in order to share. Right, was it? I can't remember the guy's name. Rose.
Brian Rose.
Brian Rose, yeah, the great mystic, said he talked about. I think Gurdjieff did as well, about the law of the three rungs on the ladder. He says we've always got to be working one rung above ourselves, getting help from above, and working one rung below ourselves, giving help below. But Rose said, don't go two rungs up because you won't understand a word, and don't go two rungs down because people will try and kill you because they don't want to hear it. It's confusing to them. So quite often when I'm talking to people about forgiveness, they go, "Where's Geoff Thompson, the hard man's got? Where's he gone?" And I'm going, "Well, this is a transition of that. My God now is not a big right cross. My God is spirit. My God is knowledge. My God is consciousness. And that consciousness in potential is in everybody, especially if there's somebody out there now who is afraid, who is depressed, who's in the wrong marriage, driving the wrong car, living in the wrong house. Maybe they're in the wrong city. Perhaps they're in the wrong body. The fear that they're running away from contains the light they need in order to expand. And we think that the fear is chasing us to hurt us. And of course it can if we give into it. But if we stop and look at it, we'll be surprised that the fear is surprised that we're running away. This is something I love from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. One of the shamans says, don't you think these monsters that present themselves are quite surprised that you're so afraid of them when they know they have no reality? There's only one legitimate fear. This is from Judaism, and that legitimate fear leaves you open to massive wisdom when you understand it. It's the beginning of wisdom, and that legitimate fear is the fear of God, or the fear of being separated from our source, or as Casper puts it, being separated from our singularity, from our authentic geometric point in our very center. So that's a healthy fear, and our conscience will talk to us about that. If we fall over to the left too much and become unkind, or if we fall over to the right and become too sickly sweet, it's saying hold the center column. And once you've received the truth, you must pass the truth on. And you won't know where to pass the truth on to. You will not know. It's insoluble, but we will tell you. Your spirit will tell you. It will tell you when to move left, when to move right, when to spend a half an hour with somebody, when to spend 5 minutes, when to say yes, when to say no, when to push and when to retreat, when to yield. It will lead you through this labyrinthian life and tell you exactly where to place this spirit. So we've got an advocate that goes before us as a vanguard, not just to show us where to go, but also to clear the way and protect us. It's behind us as a rear guard, and it's to either side of us. We are protected. We are protected while we're in that very center by the very spirit that we're bringing down. It's not just like socks and sandals, like this idea of a sickly sweet spiritual guy. This is a muscular power, and we must listen to the energy. But the absolute key that you triggered on was we receive it in order to share. Now that means me coming and sitting down and doing this when part of me is going, I don't really know what I'm doing. The spirit says to me, and I'm going to talk with these guys who really know a lot. Part of me will be there. And my spirit said, we will talk through you. You just turn up. We're your advocate. We're your counsel. We will speak through you. So I have to recognize that there's an energy in me that has vowed to serve, positive energy. There's an energy in me that doesn't want any of this because it's uncomfortable, because I have to make a burnt sacrifice in order to do it. When I place my will force between those two, as an isthmus or as a conduit or as a filament, I create light from these two forces. So there's no longer a good force and a dark force. I create light, but I create that light by burning my own fuel in the volition. So it's uncomfortable. It's not uncomfortable once we're talking. It's uncomfortable beforehand. If you go on, when I did my TED talk, for instance, I had 90 hours of practice to remember my TED talk, and every email that dropped into my mailbox, filled me with adrenaline. But I understand how to deal with that. So I put myself between those two forces, created a TED talk. Lots of forces tried to stop me, but I've made a vow. My vow is that I'm going to receive truth, but I'm going to pass it on. That's the only reason I'm receiving it. You know, the lovely Rumi poem, The Water Wheel, a beautiful Rumi poem. He says, the water wheel receives the water and gives it all away, weeping. That's the only way it stays in the garden. So we've got to keep moving on. It's not enough to say, want to serve people. We have to serve people where we're uncomfortable. And that's what I continue to do by writing a book, 99 Reasons to Forgive, or something like...
or The Divine CEO as well.
Divine CEO, yeah. Or something like Fragile, which was like an exorcism for me. It's a stage play I did. But let me just grab something for you.
Gary, how are you feeling about Geoff saying things that I think very much resonate with you?
There is a lot here that resonates. Yeah,
I want to show you. I want to show you a physical manifestation. I want to show you what when I receive and I convert my fears into light and expand, and then with that new light, that new knowledge, I pass it on to other people like the water wheel. It creates manifest things in my life. So I wrote a film about my brother dying from alcoholism that I needed to write because it was resided in me as anger, as cognitive dissonance, as disappointment, and as grief, and I didn't understand it. When I wrote that film, against my family's wishes, I had to come up against tremendous forces to write it. It won a BAFTA. So here's the BAFTA. Now, that just looks like a trophy. It doesn't look like anything, but that is a key. That's a physical manifestation of my brother's story. And what do you do with the key? You open doors with it. I opened doors in me, of course. I expanded exponentially. But also, I started getting invited to go and talk at prisons. People saying, Geoff Thompson's going to talk. Who's Geoff Thompson? Oh, he's a BAFTA winner. Oh, bring him in. So you go into the most impregnable prison in Britain, and they say nobody can get in here and nobody can get out. This is impregnable. This key opened every door to the very heart of that prison, and I was able to sit with 50 lifers in there for all sorts of reasons and talk to them about perception and say to them, your perception has created this reality. I can get in and out of this prison at will because my perception has expanded, and they understood. So there's a responsibility. You get that, and people go, it's just an ego extension. It's not. It's a key, and that comes with a responsibility. You have that, and that opens doors to other places. So you say to people,
Geoff,
it's part of your proof.
It's the potentiality for all of those things. It depends on what level you meet it.
Yeah, that's very true. So all of those things, they go, oh, this is Geoff, and he's a water wheel, and he's giving away everything we're giving him, so we'll give him more. And then I want to do more of this. I understand this. So it's not, well, you can have more, but you just need to remove more. You need to convert the stuff. You've still got some parasites in you. You've still got some negative perceptions, some unchallenged beliefs, some old cognitions, some historical or some inherited crises that you're carrying. You've still got, these are still in you. We want you to go into those and convert them. And when you convert them, you'll expand. And for every step forward you take towards that, we'll take 10 steps towards you. You're going to reach up, but we're going to reach down. But as we reach down and you reach up, you've also got to reach down and keep your vow. So the key to everything for me, and again, I want to stipulate, you can't just put this on the end of a mission statement. It's got to be felt. Is that I want some kid that wakes up at 4 a.m. in a cold sweat like me when I was younger to be able to access this video and go, that's me. That's me. That there's hope. And if that enters them, it means the spirit I've got has been imposed into them, and that spirit will expand them just enough to make that first step. And maybe they'll read this and they'll be offended by it. Same thing. I'm still their teacher. That spirit has gone into them. I had one guy wrote to me and he said, I watched you on London Real. And he said, I thought this guy's interesting. And he said, then you said something. And I was so angry at you. I was so angry that I switched off and walked away. But he had enough consciousness to think, why is it this guy said that I need to look at?
Right, yeah.
And he said, I'd come back to the interview and loved it. And this guy's become a very close friend of mine now. I did a forward to his book. Just a brave guy that wanted to see what it was that had triggered it. So our job is to be very brave and keep our vow and pass on every piece of light
Geoff,
that we'll receive.
What's the name of his book? Remember?
No, I can't remember. I haven't got it in front of me. No.
Would he mind you saying his name? He might.
It's just gone completely out of my head.
Don't worry. What we'll do, we'll put a link to his book in our show notes.
Yes, yeah.
I'd like to. I think that's a beautiful story, and I'd like to be part of.
Yeah.
That to more people. Another thing I wanted to mention.
His name is Matt. Sorry, his name is Matt Burke.
Right.
And his book is called Magic Minds.
Magic Minds. Okay.
Magic Minds. Sorry about that. I just lost him for a second, but he's a guy from Ireland. He's just come over to one of my walks. Okay. He's a wonderful guy, but that takes a lot of courage to be able to go, what is it this person's triggered in me?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. A couple of things from the book, from 99 Reasons. Now, I was not least because we've got the quantum bridge and because there's this whole thing with, I think, our audience who are going to be, they may be struggling with members of their family or close friends in terms of this thing of awakening. Can you awaken others and so on? And I think that that's something I'd love to touch on with you, Geoff. But one of the things in terms of quantum entanglement, which you mentioned in the book, which is an absolutely pivotal aspect of you looking into something, binding with something to release yourself from what had gone before. But I just wanted to read something. It's actually not what you wrote, but it's what you put at the beginning of the book, which touched me profoundly and sort of echoed throughout the book itself. It's from Khalil Gibran, and it says, and a single leaf turns not yellow, but with the silent knowledge of the whole tree. I think that really is the crux to me of what 99 Reasons is really about. It's this thing of everything being inextricably linked to each other parts. So I'd love you to develop on that if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about reciprocity. So Sri Aurobindo would say, you can't even begin to work until you understand the fixed laws. You can't even begin to work. You've got to understand and you've got to be certain about reciprocity. You can't take anybody's word for it. You need to find it for yourself. That's the rigor. Do the work. I am certain about reciprocity because I did a lot of things wrong and I watched them come back like boomerangs one at a time. I felt them growing in me, like living parasites or like living semi-autonomous thought forms that lived in me, you know. So we've got to understand reciprocity. If we don't understand reciprocity, we become very idle with what we think, what we say, and what we do. Everything we think and say and do is going to have an effect. This is why Buckminster Fuller said, at the age of 40, he had a breakdown. He said, I realized, the power of talking. And he said, I never spoke for a year because I didn't want to speak until he understood what I was talking about. He understood that we can create people or destroy people with what we think and ourselves, with what we say and with what we do. So once you understand causation, once you understand this very powerful fixed law, you're able to almost separate yourself from it, find your singularity, sit on that bridge or that arc, and just you're able to observe thoughts without the need to engage them or identify with them. You recognize that thoughts live in a separate realm. They're in a separate density. And if you don't want to, you don't have to engage them. If you do engage them, of course, if you identify with them, you become incarnated into those thoughts. Those thoughts act through you and as you in the world and create karma that you've got to pick up. So, we've always got the Honourable Dr. Jekyll always picking up the bill for the dishonourable Mr. Hyde. So once we understand causation, and I mean properly understand it, you become what we talked about before. We have a fear of God. We have a fear of breaking away from being virtuous. So we no longer think negative things. We don't engage it. We recognize we can practice that. We recognize that we don't say bad things and we don't do bad things. You don't have to look far to see the evidence of unkindness manifesting in the world. So I don't allow myself to identify with those thoughts. I think Gurdjieff called it, and Ospensky called it, internal considering. So if we start considering and sitting with depression, or if we sit with fear, if we sit with a dislike, if we sit with a judgment, we are actually allowing our vital energies to feed off that. Or our vital energies, it feeds off our vital energies.
Yeah.
So once you understand reciprocity, you recognize it's the same whether it's the microcosm or the macrocosm, whether it's internal or external. I had a friend said, I don't get into fights anymore, but I'm having a lot of fights in my head. And I'm saying, well, it's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. He said, I'm destroying people in the head. I'm kicking 10 barrels at them, but I'm not hitting them in real life. But he still doesn't recognize that none of the thoughts there is, unless he identifies with them. We can watch them. The best book to read for this at the moment is probably Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now. It is a masterclass in just developing the observer and just observing thoughts as a separate thing. And it's, although he doesn't mention it in there, his book is a book of exorcism. It's a way of exercising negative perceptions. And it's also the summation of Buddhism, which is dependent arising. In Buddhism, they say everything that arises is dependent on something else. In other words, if reality exists at the level of engagement, if I don't engage the thought, if I don't consider it, if I don't identify with it, it has no reality. So once you understand causation, then you start to be very careful about, well, two things: careful and excited and fearful. Careful because you recognize reciprocity is real. Excited because you think I'm going to plant as many great seeds as possible. Fearful because you recognize that if you're still carrying negativity, negative habits, they're always going to try and trick you into engagement, into doing something in the world. And as you get a higher platform, as you have a bigger standing in society, the potential to do massive harm is you kind of always on the very edge of that. So I make sure I don't allow any negative thought. I mean, I just don't. I'm not saying that I'm not saying I'm not assailed at times. I'm just saying I don't allow them.
It's actually very sobering, Geoff, what you're saying, because even a very small platform like we have at the moment, Gary and I very early on felt that the people that we were having on and that the audience were our treasure at a very profound level, that this network that was suddenly being created, not least amongst the people who were kind enough to come on and join us and to share their truth, and then obviously the onward ripples out into the audience, that we had a real duty of care. And I don't mean that in some sort of legal way. I mean that on a very much on a soulful level. That it's a real privilege, obviously, to have yourself here, but to have those people who come and add their voice. And as this does rise, and as it meets more people at whatever level they're met at by this material, there's a real sanctity that we need to feel about that. And so thank you for bringing that up, because it is something that I want to pervade. I'm sure Gary feels the same, to pervade the whole channel and what we're doing. And it's certainly something that I feel pervading, not least 99 Reasons to Forgive, but all of your work now. Yeah,
it's true what you said as well about entanglement. Where if we engage with something, we entangle with it. And the more we engage it and identify with it, the more we entangle. That entanglement might last 5 minutes, in which time we can do a lot of damage, or it might last a whole lifetime. Some people are entangled with perceptions and beliefs, or with wounds and abuses. They're entangled with it for their whole life. And of course, the solution to entanglement, ironically, is entanglement. If I want to get beyond negative entanglement, I just need to entangle myself either with the vacuum, so go into a vacuum state, which is our own geometric point, our own singularity, where we just sit and observe, or I can go, which is entangling with nothingness, which is the ultimate, the art of doing nothing, as they say, or I can entangle with something very beautiful, very positive. And I, as a developing adept, I don't need to choose what that is. That's placed before me every single day. You know, of all of the things that are out there where I can put my energy, I need to make sure my energy is not incandescent. I'm not all heat and no light. You know, like an incandescent light bulb is, you know, 10% light, 90% heat. If you get an LED light, it goes through a filter, goes through a chip, and it's 90% light because it's directional. So my energy is directional because it all comes through the microchip of spirit, which says, put it here, put it even down to how long to do, how long to speak, and even, you know, who to send the book to, who not to, who to say yes to, who to say no to. Yeah. Sometimes I'm serving people when I say no because I'm aware that my directional light will not be received by them at the moment. So it would be seeds planted on rocky ground. Yeah. So you get to that level and you're no longer dissonant or confused by the 10,000 things. You're told exactly where to put it. And you're encouraged to put it in that place and then just leave it there and then move on. I'm not counting coup. I'm not looking to see whether it's had an effect. I call myself a cosmic postman. I'll just post the letters and move on and do my very best to take no credit for any of it.
Gary, I'd love to hear your thoughts about how you're feeling with both of these discussions with Geoff, the one we were lucky to do earlier and this one now. Is this bringing things up to the surface that you can share with us?
Probably too many things, really, for the time left. There's so much to unpack.
Yeah, how long have you got?
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? You know, I mean, in keeping things light in a humorous way, I quite find it interesting when you're talking about the light coming in and the filters and things. And it took a long time, months, you could say, for me to do some internal work to get to this point of coming on a camera, you know, because I don't like social situations. Something about cameras I don't like. So it's like, you know, then I really love my out of the limelight, peace and quiet life. I enjoy that. I was like, but I kept getting these messages, well, you've got something to share. And I'm like, you know, so there's that inner, were you sure about this? Yeah, we're going to back you up, you know. And then I remember we did like some practice videos with another friend of Casper's. And I had the fear still, but then an anger that I was being forced, if you like, to do this as well.
Yeah.
I can't do this, guys. I don't want to do it. Like, you have to do it. And then at those moments, though, you know, I felt I'd lost the fear and everything took over. And then I'm like sitting in this chair thinking, well where are you? You've left me here now. I don't know what to say. And gradually over time, that I don't feel, you know, I feel a little bit more flow and connection comes back. I think, okay, you know.
It's the same as anything, isn't it, Gary? It's just practice. It's letting it come through.
Yes, that's it. That's the main thing. I think, well, sometimes there's a little bit of that feel the fear and do it anyway type thing. I think, well, plus you can feel stagnant in your life. I think, let's just throw a curveball out there then. See where.
If you want to understand more as well, you're just really cashing in your fears. Each of them contains a treasure, a literal treasure, consciousness, and you're cashing them in. That's the exchange at the isthmus, at that level. You know, there's Gurdjieff talks about the exchange. You know, this axiomatic place where we are giving something of ourselves in order to receive something. Then we're giving that away on the water wheel and then going back again. So for me, if you've got the purpose, if you know why you're doing it, and I never felt my own life was a big enough purpose. I felt I needed something wider than that. And the idea that there were people out there who were suffering like me really triggered something in me. And the idea that I wanted my children and my friends to try and go a little bit further than I did It meant that I wanted to pass it on to them. I've got this stuff. I want to pass it on to them. And in the beginning, I passed it on to everybody, even if they didn't want it, which was I wasted a lot of energy. So now my stuff is my light is directional light. So I just put it where I'm asked. But when I'm asked, you know, I always turn up and I always do it. Before bringing this book out, I had a lot of anticipation, even though I've done a lot of talks, because it's such a sensitive subject. And I'm trying to bring a new denotation to this. I'm saying this isn't about letting somebody off or giving somebody pardon. We haven't got the power to do that as humans. We haven't got the power to do that. This is about recognizing that I am bound to the nature of my grudge. I'm bound to the nature of my fear. And I want to disentangle from that. And to disentangle from that by finding the truth, which is just beyond those levels of perceptions. And that's there for everybody. So I look at you and I think, well, you're just a guy that's cashing all your chips in. You've got all of this fear and you're just cashing in and expanding. And you can have as much as you want. Just need to make room for it. But it takes a tremendous amount of courage. I remember the first one I did with Peter Constantine. We did some videos. I was so nervous, I had to talk to him behind the camera. And then suddenly I was doing 6 videos in a day and, you know, and doing all sorts of talks. And I remember bringing a perspective to it for me anyway. I remember talking to a woman called Karen Manderbach, who was a big television producer. She produced like The Roseanne Show and Third Rock from the Sun and things like that. And she said to me, television, Geoff, is a very tough business. It's very tough, hard business. And I said, well, in my last job, people tried to kill me. I said, I'm presuming it's no tougher than that. So I gave myself a perspective. And I thought, I remember going on Richard and Judy and someone said, oh, it could be terrible. You could make a terrible mistake. I said, listen, if I make a mistake, I said, Richard or Judy, they're not going to stab me or jump on me, which would have happened on the door. I said, if I make a mistake and I muck up, that's okay. I can deal with that. And so if I gave myself a perspective, but the biggest thing, give yourself logos, purpose. And that is, and if we don't know what that is, we can ask. We can go into our prayer and meditation and say, where do you want me? In this world where there are so many choices, I don't know where to go. I don't know what I'm doing. Where do you want me? And they'll go, oh, this guy's woke up. Let's show him where he can work
yeah,
best.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's where you're at, Gary. That's why you're here, is because the voice that was telling you can't do this sort of stuff has been told you can be quiet for a while.
Yeah.
Or quieter.
Of course it doesn't want you to do it, Gary, because it's going to be converted in the volition of your work.
Yeah.
You know, it's not dead, it's just converted. It's going to go into light. It's going to expand into consciousness.
Imagine the amount of energy that actually contains.
Massive, massive. It has each concept nucleus, like each acorn, has the potential for infinity, because everything is contained in everything. So any concept nucleus, if I get a concept nucleus on the door, like a single idea, and I unfold it, it has the potential to reach everything, absolutely everything, because it's all contained, you know, this idea of this idea that everything is sentient, every motive dust has sentience, everything is conscious. So I can enter that Dharma gate through anything. So if I have a concept nucleus, it's just, you know, how much do I want to take out of it? How much do I want to expand from it? And we know that's difficult. This is what the philosopher Aeschylus said, those who learn suffer. Because of course, in order to learn, we have to convert the fear, and we have to convert the anxiety or the depression, which holds the light, in order for us to learn what we already knew. You know?
Geoff, I
and
think
it takes a lot of courage.
One, that's incredibly kind of you to share your wisdom generally, and to share with Gary and myself in that way, and with the audience. Again, we're coming to the end of this particular recording. I'd love to have you on again at some point.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for making yourself available. We'd love to see you again, and I'd urge anybody to grab hold of a copy. We will put the details, as I said, in our Show More section, of 99 Reasons to Forgive, but also of any of Geoff's books. They all have a very profound centre to them. So thank you again, Geoff. And
Thanks,
I hope that you'll come back and join us.
I will. Thanks, Gary.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.